Dunkelheit geboren. Nein, im Schatten der Zeit. Verlorene Seelen.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This week I'm back with a new video. This time we have OBI and his hard techno and Schranz. So these are the 4 tracks that I use as a reference. You can feel the influence of Schranz, but it's mainly hard techno. Also, be sure to check the project file in the link in the description. Thank you guys so much for the support, for liking, subscribing, commenting. Also, make sure to join me on Instagram. I'm gonna try to be more active and make some polls and other stuff like that for the videos. Thank you guys so much. Here we go.
Gefangen in ewiger Dunkelheit. Dunkelheit geboren. Nein, im Schatten der Zeit.
Okay, so we start with the kick. This is my kick. So it's a hard techno kick, but it's also like a kind of Schranz offbeat. So you have here the group. So I'm gonna withdraw the group processing first, and we're gonna dive into the first group because I made up first this kick rack. And then I added all of those other layers, some top kicks, some grit, some kind of reverby offbeat. So here it's almost like a group in a group. So I first started with this main kick, which is a classic punchy vengeance kick. So without the processing, it looks like that. So pretty solid punch. I'm gonna already put some saturation on it to make it extra raw. And then I'm gonna build an audio effect track, which is basically my kick rack. For each, I'm gonna build a dry kick, a reverb, a delay, which is almost like a rumble, and another kind of delay to add some grit. So my dry kick is gonna be just the same punch, just boosting a little bit the high end. I'm gonna then have this grit offbeat, which is composed of 100% reverb that I put through an amp to create already some kind of distortion, and then it's just sidechain like this. So here it's just to make some ambience. This is going to be more of a kind of rumble. So it's a mid grit layer. Instead of the reverb, this time it's some delay with this setup. This is going to be going through an amp also, but this time on heavy mode. And then just sidechaining. And I'm having like a double sidechain to make something a bit more driving. Then I'm gonna have a second layer, which is more in the high end, again with the same delay, but this time with some amp in rock mode, and it's going to go through the same sidechain. So altogether, I have a mid offbeat and I have this kick punch. After that, I'm just gonna EQ a little bit. make it a bit more clean, of course, you already have some resonances here, which is usually the case when you add lots of saturation. And here is to cut the boxiness from the kick. I'm then putting the thing into mono and again making it even more clear and clean. So then I'm gonna stack up some different layers. So I'm gonna go through those top kicks because it's pretty easy. Here is just like a kind of perk, but it's very characteristic of the latest OBI kicks. So you really have like the talk, which is punching in the mid frequencies. Here is just another one. So it's more of a top end top kick here. So I use this sample, but basically I'm just adding a bit more character and just taking the transient here with that start. So altogether it's gonna be like this. And then I'm gonna add more offbeat and especially the rumble. Here it's just another kind of mid layer, more like a reverby offbeat feeling. This one, again, some reverb. So it's just an impact. Basically, you can use any kind of noise or some kind of sample that's gonna create some drive like this with the faders. Also adding some delay to be more like natural and lively. And then it's going to be my rumble here. So again, I'm gonna put out those processing. I have maybe a bit too much layers. Sometimes it's a bit of a mess, but here I created this rumble from all of those layers. So the main one is going to be this one. I'm using this kick sample and I take only the offbeat just to get a sub. Then I have this one, more for a grit mid layer. This one also. So basically I'm just stacking different samples and layers to get grit and different saturation fillings in the mid frequencies. Here it's with a delay. So delay amp, it's same as the one that we saw in the group, but here it's more like in the mid and high mids. And finally I have this 16th pattern, so it's just a kick that I put in this pattern, again some delay, some amp to distort it, and sidechaining. So altogether I kind of having a big stack of noise. Since there are some delays, it's gonna be more moving and more lively, so the groove is gonna be better than just something very straightforward. And of course then I'm just gonna distort it even more, compress it, and sidechaining to have a solid rumble. So I have the amp, some sidechain here, another kind of sidechain, and then just cleaning up a bit the frequencies here. So altogether I'm having something pretty full. And then I'm gonna do the same on the group, which is basically distorting a little bit more and then compressing a lot. So this is what it looks like. Just a slight compression here, then adding an inflator, then saturating slightly, EQing. So here again, just cleaning up a bit the mid frequencies. Then I have even more EQ. So here the tonal balance was a little bit too much in the bass frequency. So here it's really like balancing out to bring back a lot of mid and high frequency. And you see like that, I get a lot of headroom and way more punch. Then I'm compressing using a lot OTT recently. It just makes everything heavier. And then just just a final clipping to cut the transient. So this is my final kick. And I then cleaning it a little bit more with some more EQ, OTT, a slight amp also. It puts back forward the transient. I like to do that. And then I'm just playing around with some patterns, sometimes like this or like this one. I'm also playing here with the auto filter, and at the same time you can create even more texture with that automation on the dry wet knob of the amp. I also add a few other layers, so these are some reverse kicks. I did that for the drop, so I just took the same sample that I have here and I reverse it, then use the faders to create this effect. I have another kind of kick rhythm. This is taken from the reference track. So this one is more like just a reverse kind of reverb, just to add a bit more movement and ambience and room to the kick. So nothing special here, just a stack of kind of loops and impacts with some faders. And this one is more like a texture. So I took back one of the kick that I used for the rumble, and I made another texture with some delay, amp, distortion with a decapitator, EQ, other amp, maybe a bit too much, but you know, matters is that at the end I have this texture and I make come this texture very slowly in the intro with the kick. So it's a way to make your intro less boring in your track. So just make some texture come and go slowly until you reach like the very beginning of your different leads or other elements. I have also this 16th perk that adds a bit of groove. So this is a technique that I like to use. I'm just throwing a random loop, drum loop or top loop in the sampler, and I'm gonna create and generate a pattern with the generator from Ableton. It's gonna create this groovy pattern, and it's gonna trigger different samples from this loop because I am in slice mode here. So if I take it in classic mode, you will only trigger the first sound, but if you do in slice mode, you're gonna trigger the different sounds using the piano rule. So then I'm gonna throw lots of saturation because I want to make something industrial. So without it, it's just a perk, but with all of this saturation, it instantly creates some character. I can then play with a transpose, depending on what I want to do. And then I'm just making it slightly more lively with that super massive. It's gonna add a grainy texture in the background. I'm just sidechaining. You can try with different loops, you can try with different pitch or different saturation for other types of character. And you can also change the pattern here. And it's really like a method to create lots of different texture easily. So that's pretty much it for all of this group, which are related to my kick. And now we're gonna go through the drums. So just before my drums, I have just a last kind of texture that I'm gonna use. It's almost like a sweep, a kind of noise sweep. And to make it more dark, I just use like a reverse sample. I think it's just a hat that I reversed from a drum loop. It's mainly noise. I knew I wanted some noise. Here, I'm gonna create something more dull and more like dark with a grain delay. Basically, with a grain delay, you can create instantly some weird stuff like that. I'm gonna make it in the background at a slight reverb like this, distorting it, making it even more industrial, and then using the shifter again to change the tone. And then I'm gonna just EQ and sidechain, and it's gonna add that little something to the background of my kick. So now with my drums, this is my group. So there are a few top loops, an open hat, a ride, a hi-hat, and that's pretty much it, and just a snare. So these top loops are gonna create a driving rhythm first. So here I'm gonna use the same technique on those two loops. So basically I'm gonna throw in different top loops that I like. What it is interesting in those top loops is that you can get the groove from it, but then I'm gonna create my own texture and my own industrial sound from it. So here I like it because there's a groove, there's different velocity, there's a slight humanization. You see like the perk is not sitting exactly in the quantize mode. Then I'm gonna distort it like I do with some Schranz. So it's going to create some noise and instantly make the thing more thick. Then adding a slide plate. And here I'm going to keep only the mids and high end because I'm going to have lots of different elements here after. I'm going to have the Reese bass, I'm going to have the pluck, I'm going to have the lead. So I also have lots of texture in the mid range. So I will keep those loops and hats in the high end. I have here just a source for the different resonances that comes from the compression, and then I'm gonna sidechain it like this. So I'm keeping a bit of high end here because it feels more natural, so that's why I sidechain like this. Then I make a second loop, but just different tone. So these are gonna get the driving rhythm. I'm gonna add a very straightforward open hat like this. So it's just 909, just a slight saturation for the industrial feeling, then slight reverb, same reverb, then EQing, sidechain, just controlling a bit the compression, sus2 for the resonancy, and that's it for this open hat. I then have the ride, which is used a lot by OBI. So this is the 909 classic pattern like this. So controlling and playing with the gain, trying different pitch so that it feels like faster. And also I like the tone more. Same kind of plate reverb, EQing, sidechain, and sus2. Then I have another driving hi-hat, this time with some 99s. So this is this closed hi-hat pattern, velocity movement, classic kind of movement, humanization, 10%. Then playing around with the starting point of the sample, which is gonna affect the tone. I felt like there was more resonancy and I like better the transient when I start here. I'm also playing here to make it shorter, so it's the same as playing here. That's what I did actually. Adding again slight saturation, clipping, which works a lot and is going to create that heavy saturation. Basically it's just the same as the brute compression that I use here. And then just same kind of EQ, reverb, sidechain, and that's it. Also sus2. I then have a last kind of enhancing loop here that I made with some samples that I chopped up, make another kind of rhythm. You see it kind of adds a different groove and even more speed to the thing. So again, just saturating, squashing the thing, either with some saturation, either with some clippers, either with some brute compression and some compressors. So it's almost like the same method each time. I put it through some saturation to get the industrial feeling. I control the compression, I sidechain, I EQ, and that's pretty much it. Finally, I have my snare. So I took a snare sample that I like, which is mainly some kind of noise. and which fits well to the track. So again, I'm gonna boost it here with some compression, also making it more slappy with that compressor, EQ, and that's pretty much it. And finally, on the group, I just have a last group EQ in the mixing phase, and I'm also here managing the thing to be a bit more wide for the group. And that's it for my drums. So then we go to the harmonics. So there are a few elements in this track, but the most important ones are the pad, the harp, the Reese. So I'm going to start first with the harp, which is the first element to come in the track. So I made this melody. Basically, I am trying to make something dark and melancholic. So same as all the melodies that I do, I start just by putting some random kind of notes in the scale. Of course, Phrygian, Lydian, minor are the different scales that are going to work more for dark and melancholic stuff. So that's why I chose this one. I start with the root notes and then I just throw a bunch of notes and try to make a rhythm. Once I have different notes that I like, basically this first movement, I'm gonna keep it and use it again in a second time, and then I'm gonna just use the same notes in that first quarter of a bar, and I'm just gonna change one note. That's what I did here. I changed this G to F and this A to E. The rest is steady, and I'm gonna also maybe change one note at the end of the two bars so that it's more moving again. But I also try and think about what feeling my brain is telling me the melody is conveying. So it's really also important to hear and feel what's the emotion. So after that, I'm gonna use saw waves a lot in this track, basically some basic shapes. So here, just a plug, so small envelope, basic shape like this, and just a moving filter, saturation here, and slight delay. I'm gonna add even more saturation because I want something, of course, not as mild as this one. I want something a bit dirty, so that's why I'm adding those different saturations. It's gonna add also a different emotion, so distortion can also change the way it feels. And then just creating that room with some delays, some reverb, and OTT again to make it more strong. And then I'm just EQing. So another interesting point is also the EQ and the different frequencies. It can also affect the way it feels. Here, if I have too much of these mid frequencies, it's not gonna feel the same. And also I want to get and keep that space for the bass later in the track, also for the pad. So I'm using this harp. I'm gonna use the automation to slowly open it, reaching the breakdown. I have also a second harp, which is just here for the support. So here I just took a random patch and I added it. It just felt a little bit more full with that supporting harp, but it's the same effect chain. And then I'm just using this Zeus slight EQ again and sidechaining on the harp group. So next I have my pad. So this pad is made out of saw waves also. So saturation, delay, reverb, pretty simple. It's just a saw wave with some detuning, slightly again. And the filter is moving as it plays. I'm gonna create two different movements. I have first these, I have the root note and the F note. It's gonna play together. First with a slowly like ambience movement, and then when I reach the breakdown, I'm gonna add more variation in the movement. So at first it's just a saw wave, as I told you. I'm gonna distort even more this saw wave so that it creates something more industrial and more dark again. And to make it feel like a pad, I'm gonna use lots of reverb. And this time I've used this rack from Audio React, which is basically a ton of reverb in the first chain, like 100% almost, and different delays to create some layers and to create something more moving and more full. So you also have some flanger, chorus, and different kind of delay, filter delay here, delay in another one. So you can get this one. So without it, you feel it's just a saw. And here it's something moving, and you even have some kind of noise with the saturation. I then, of course, put it through an OTT to make it more strong, more compressed. I have also some dynamic EQs, especially here in the mid-range. And it's really useful to use these dynamic EQs, especially for the pads and different harmonics, because you can control over time the different frequency areas, and it's not just EQing at one point in the time, because the frequencies are and the volumes are really moving those kind of sounds. I'm also having a Thus, which is very useful also because it keeps moving and the resonances are different between the different notes. I'm having the same patch here, another layer, but just one octave below. Again, it's a supporting layer to make it more strong and more full. And finally, this is my Reese bass. So here it's one of the Reese bass that I made for my tutorial, so you can check it if you want to see how to make that, but basically it's just some detuned saw waves. Here I'm just making sure the bass, the sub comes slowly, because it's a wonderful feeling to feel like the sub is gonna grow and embrace your body. Then I'm boosting it again. OTT, which is super powerful here, really puts back forward the high end, adds a bit of crispiness here. And that's pretty much it for this Reese. So same thing here for the movement. I'm just playing with the different notes of my scale, but this time 3 different notes in the bar, which gives more like a dark and mysterious feeling rather than this, which is more like a classic pop song kind of movement. Then I'm obviously making the same movement here, and then I'm using it back in the track after as a drop. And to do that, of course, I'm gonna need to cut that very low end. So that's why I'm adding this group that's gonna affect the channel at that point. And here I make sure I don't have this low end that's gonna clash with the kick. I'm also sidechaining, of course. I'm sidechaining like this because it feels more natural than this feeling. It's gonna feel too much of a trance track like this, so it's gonna feel weird if I do like a full sidechain. And here I'm just using the same pattern in the breakdown, but I make it longer. So it was like this. I'm just gonna duplicate it to make it longer like this. And then when I bring back the ARP, I'm gonna switch back to the same movement but quicker as in the breakdown. And that's pretty much it for my harmonics. Just you can see that I'm using some reverb here, also some reverb in the return channel to make my transitions. So here, for instance, so I have some reverb here, and also from the Endless Smile. I'm also using it here to make this on the drums, to make that sweep and that transition. And yeah, that's pretty much it for these groups. And next I have my vocal. So OBI is known for using some German vocals. Of course, I don't speak German, so what I did is I use AI to generate some vocal in German. So without the processing chain, it looks like this.
Herzen aus Stahl, gefangen in ewiger Dunkelheit. Geister rufen, stille Brennlicht, kein Weg.
So pretty robotic at first. It was some sentence that I created with ChatGPT. I asked him to make some random dark words in German. Then I put from text to speech in that website. So you can check it if you want to generate some vocals in some different language. I then make this file. I chopped it up so that it feels more natural and it fills up the whole breakdown. And then I'm gonna process it to make the thing more fitting to the track and to add like a dark vibe, something even like some kind of Rammstein kind of vibe. So first I have pitched it down because I thought the pitch was better.
Herzen aus Stahl, gefangen in
I'm then gonna add this very long vocal processing chain. I'm gonna try and explain what I did here. First, I'm gonna try and compress more the voice because there's too much dynamic. So what I do is I'm using a limiter and it's gonna basically reduce the dynamic. So of course, since I'm reducing here some gain, I gotta put it back. So that's why I'm doing this gain staging here. I'm then adding a de-esser just for that sibilance. Then I'm gonna compress it. Actually, more de-essing. And then to feel like almost like a kind of radio sound or something a bit raw, you can use different tools. So first, I'm gonna use the pedal. It kind of makes it more narrow and more dirty. I'm then gonna pitch a bit the thing with some formant shaper with that little alto boy. Again, making it a bit more dark. I'm creating a slight kind of echo to make the thing more in stereo. I then use this EQ. So this is really you can feel I had lots of low end in that vocal, so I cut it pretty heavily. And then I'm just looking for the different resonances to cut them like that. Then I'm gonna compress and boost the whole thing. And then I'm gonna use different kind of plugins that I tried. Actually, I don't use so much vocals, but I tried different plugins that I have for vocals. This is the result that I had. So this thing is gonna enhance, compress a bit more, making it more clear. And this is gonna get that kind of radio feeling. It's gonna get that room. And then I have a slight delay here to make it more lively. Then final compression to really make it thick, and then just withdrawing the resonances with Sus 2. Then I'm using this to see what's my stereo, and I'm actually making it very narrow because I liked the feeling that it was making, and then I'm gonna opening at the drop.
Schwarze Schatten atmen, die Zeit aus der Dunkelheit geboren. Nein, im Schatten der Zerfall der Seelen tanzen im Abgrund. Schwarze Schatten.
And that's how I made that vocal. Finally, I just have a few effects. So first I have this effect that I made for the drop. So what I use here is a kind of noise effect, but I'm throwing it through some heavy effect. Here it's an effect track from Soundtoys. I tried just different things. I just used the New Toys Universe sound design preset, and it was creating something that I liked, like a long reverb with some elements moving in the background. Then I'm gonna add some grain delay if I want to change the tone. Basically, you can create an infinite number of effects like this. And just sidechaining, of course, because my kick is working at that moment. And finally, I just have a few sweep here for my drop to just a crash that I reversed. A short sweep like this. Finally, I have an impact here. And that's pretty much it for this track, guys. So I hope you liked it. Thank you guys so much for the support. I see you in the next one. Ciao.